The time for testimony has passed. Now the accusations start flying. From the very moment he entered Jerusalem, there were many testimonies to consider. When he taught in the temple, healed people in the streets, ate with his disciples, up to even when he stood bound before the Jewish council, the people responded to him with curiosity. In the Gospels, we find a restless inquiry to understand the truth about just who this Jesus really is. Is he a prophet, a priest, a king? Is this the promised Messiah, the Son of Man? Does he have the power to heal, even on the Sabbath? Does he have the power to forgive? How can he be a human, but also God? Is he dangerous? Wondering turns to debate, which reaches towards universal significance of cosmic gravity, but still the testimonies considered are undeniably particular. This conversation about who Jesus is in and about a particular way of being Jewish on this land under Roman occupation. And even the council doesn't agree on what that means. So when he stands before them, they turn to their closest frame of reference, the prophets. After all, the Torah gave clear instructions on how to decide whether a prophet was true or false. To be trusted, it said prophets needed witnesses who can confirm their testimony, and the prophecies they testify must come true. But Jesus' disciples have fled out of fear for their safety. There are other false witnesses, but their testimonies don't agree. Some bring false testimony, but it contradicts itself. They're not any closer to agreeing amongst themselves on the truth of just who this man really is. So finally, they ask him, "Are you the Christ, the Son of the Blessed One?" And Jesus says, "I am. And what's more, you will see the Son of Man seated at the right hand of the power and coming with the clouds of heaven." If Jesus is a prophet, this is not really a prophecy for which they can wait to come true. It's just too dangerous. And if it turns out false, then this is blasphemy. Why do we still need witnesses, the chief priest says. This man claims that he is God coming in the form of Christ. Amongst themselves, they don't even agree on the importance of this, of what this means for them. Its universal importance is greater than they can possibly understand, but they do know it's dangerous. So they bring him to Pilate, the Roman governor of Judea. They live under Roman occupation. And Rome's vast empire was not just a kingdom. It was a universalizing reality imposed on them by force. Rome was a new language and grammar of life that overshadowed their own, that took up their own into its logics. Every identity and testimony had to be filtered through the lens of Roman rule. It says, before Pilate, they accused him of many things. But interestingly, Pilate only focuses on one. It's the only one that he can lodge in this universal empire logic of Rome, the only frame of reference that Rome has, power. So he asks him, "Are you the king of the Jews?" Jesus says, "You say so," and turns to silence. The teaching prophet has nothing more to say. Before the council, there were many possible identities for this man, Jesus, for them to debate and for him to prove by his works of healing and teaching and feeding. There's a dialogue to be had in a larger, deeper religious tradition of a particular people. Before the Jewish council, Jesus rightfully prophesies his arrival as the Son of Man. But before Pilate, there's no way he can be a king in a way that Pilate could appreciate. Everyone knows that for a king to be true, he must have power in land and armies and in the allegiance of a people, many peoples. Anyone can make a claim to power. And most of the time, no one really worries about it. But at a certain point, even conspiracy and powerless fanaticism proves dangerous when it's behind a sword or at the end of a gun. And Pilate very shrewdly gets the Judeans to confirm, to yell out that they have no allegiance to this person. They admit that they have no power that Pilate can recognize. So Pilate puts words in their mouth. What should I do with the one you call King of the Jews? In a master stroke of bureaucratic administration, he makes the Judeans present Jesus as their king, only so they can present themselves as kingless and in need of Rome's rule. His questioning stirs up a fervor in the crowd. At the same time, he squashes any fervor for independence or revolution they might once have had in people like Barabbas. And even Pilate can marvel at this, but not for long. In Rome, there is only one punishment for both power-hungry fanatics and true kings alike. We might marvel at Pilate's actions. He looks innocent, while the Judeans look murderous at first glance. But this is by design. What he's doing is commonplace to running an empire, dividing and conquering, brokering a pittance of a compromise to claim an ultimate power lodged in violent allegiance. But to be honest, this is much more boring than the conversation they were having before. This is a textbook case of the banality of evil. What could be restless questioning over the identity of just who God is and how God comes to us, that conversation is forced into the confines of human power and allegiance. So just like in the temple, one creature is to be sacrificed for the sins of another, but now it's Jesus for Barabbas. In an almost ritualistic faction, he is scourged and beaten and mocked, but neither Pilate nor the people have a frame of reference for the kind of priesthood that Jesus is about to exercise on their behalf as the sacrifice. The other day, I was watching the HBO documentary on the biotech company Theranos, founded by young college dropout Elizabeth Holmes. She was making claims that she had developed a groundbreaking form of early disease prevention with non-invasive blood testing. And at one point, she was valued at $9 billion. She said, to be able to give people the tools to change their life is an incredible blessing. It's a privilege. Every single day, I'm just so grateful for the way in which this is unfolding. It's a gift from God. But then it comes to light that this medical miracle was really just a large-scale corporate conspiracy of fraud, and an estimated 9 billion turned to zero. They brought on behavioral economist Daniel Ariely to describe just how many people could take part in this culture of malpractice. And he described the psychological experiment he conducted. Tell participants that they can take home the number of dollars corresponding to the number on a dice they roll 20 times. So 6 gets $6, 5 gets $5, and so on. But then the experimenter introduces a new twist. The participant must decide beforehand to themselves whether they'll take home the top number or the bottom number rolled. So either 5 or 2 or 6 or 1. And only after rolling would they have to tell the experimenter whether they chose top or bottom. And he says, obviously, over the course of 20 rolls, the participants were, shall we say, lucky in their results. And they get luckier, it turns out, the higher the dice rolls get. In the experiment, they strap the participants up to a lie detector. And he says it's generally accurate at telling when they're lying. But then they add another twist. Now the money can go to a charity of the person's choice. So the question is, do they cheat more or less? He found that they cheated more. And what's more, now the lie detector can't tell when they're lying. He says the lie detector introduces a tension. But if it's not wrong, there's no tension. We all want the world to be a certain way. And we just rationalize our actions to make it true or to live into it. This is always easier under the cover of our own idealism. But perhaps it's even easier when our safety is in question. After all, safety is at the bottom of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And truth be told, it's at the bottom of everyone's actions in this story, everyone except for Jesus. Even their political fanaticism and their religious idealism is cloaked in a terror for their safety. Now, truth and reality have been twisted through their worldview, and it can even justify murder. But what takes place next is more complicated than just lies. An empire would not stand long on just falsehood. Instead, it finds its home in another powerful reality, the senselessness of violence and our need for safety. And it's a terrifying thing that even when we love God and try to do what's right, we still feel unsafe at times. Now conversations are coming up more and more about safety in the midst of another horrifying school shooting. These flash points, they stand out morbidly in our minds. They haunt us where it cuts deepest. And often we give them more explanatory power than they can possibly bear, where in fact they're banal too in their evil. Because truthfully, the worst moments of violence in public discourse can only unveil the senselessness of that violence. But this too is part of its terror. Its senselessness only leads to greater fear that it could come anytime, anywhere, to anyone. This violence cuts to the core. It transcends our identities and allegiances. It forces our discourse into terms of violent human power and allegiance. It constrains our choices within our political and national and religious identities. And God doesn't offer a better identity in their place. After all, the Christian church has too often fallen prey to the empire logics of Rome. Christians often fail to provide mercy when it's most needed. But God offers something more important. God offers God's self as a person. And so only once, this one time on the cross, can senseless violence unveil true identity, true meaning, true power. Because we find those things in God, and Christ is God, even in these circumstances. He's shown to be our true prophet, priest, and king. Here in Christ, we are given a better frame of reference for what is true and what is safe. Not floating far above in the clouds, distant in the future, but as a God who entered right here with us in the worst particular circumstances. We find the true identity of God in the one who who is on the receiving end of the worst harm imaginable. The God who stepped into unsafety, even to death, at the hands of human violence, precisely so that others don't have to, so that we don't have to. This is God who is our prophet, who stands silent before human power with nothing to say, making no defense for himself, but still laying bare injustice. This is God who is our high priest, just as he himself is sacrificed, interceding for us even as we fail to respond with mercy. This is a God who is king, who wields no violent power, yet is truly king, not just of the Jews, but of Rome too, and in fact, the whole cosmos, because God is truer than what we know to be true. This is a God who keeps us safe beyond our ideas of what it takes to live safely. And so we can imagine what could change if we truly lived into this reality, if we saw God for who God truly is in Christ, as the one below and above and within us. Thanks be to God.